All right, so let me break down what went on during Sportcenter earlier today, because it turned into a really intriguing conversation about Andrew Wiggins and the Lakers. The way they presented it honestly felt like one of those storylines we've seen play out year after year in the NBA. You know what I mean? Big-name player gets linked early, the asking price is sky high, and then, as training camp starts creeping closer, the conversation shifts, and suddenly, the door opens again. That's exactly where we are with Wiggins right now. The analysts on the show were really diving into how heavily Wiggins has been connected to the Lakers. They pointed out that this isn't some wild prediction or crazy rumor. It's just the same pattern we see almost every offseason. At the start, the Warriors' asking price was considered way too much. But now, with camp right around the corner, the chatter is heating up, and the possibility is back on the table. And here's what made it more interesting. The conversation tied directly into the Lakers securing Luka Doncic long-term. The panel explained that once Luka committed, it gave the Lakers a big sense of stability, but also raised expectation. Rob Pelinka has been out front saying the team's goal is clear: compete for a title this season. He doesn't want this front office to just sit back and celebrate keeping Luka, almost like throwing their hands up and saying, "Mission accomplished." Instead, the mindset has to stay aggressive, to keep hunting for the right moves that complete the roster around Luka and LeBron James. That's why Wiggins' name is such a focal point. On Sportcenter, they debated what kind of difference he would actually make. Would adding him really put the Lakers over the top? Because if the front office believed Wiggins was truly the missing piece, the guy who takes them from contender to champion, you'd think they'd already be all in, giving up picks and young players without hesitation. But clearly, that hasn't happened yet. The hesitation, according to the analysts, probably comes down to two things: cost and timing. The Warriors want real value in return, and the Lakers are asking themselves whether it's smart to burn through assets right now. Remember, they're holding on to future picks, and next summer, they'll have even more flexibility. So do you cash those in early? Or wait until you're absolutely sure Wiggins is the guy? That was the core debate. They compared him to players already on the roster, like Rui Hachimura, Dalton Knecht, and Gabe Vincent. The point was, is Wiggins enough of an upgrade over those guys to justify sending out a package that big, including a first-rounder? Some of the analysts were firm. Yes, Wiggins makes the team better today, but others said it feels like an overpay, and if another need pops up mid-season, the Lakers would have no way to address it. That's the kind of gamble that could backfire. Another angle they touched on was the what-if factor. Every team in the league has them. The Clippers had one with Bradley Beal. What if he fits? What if he doesn't? The Thunder, even with all their talent, still have what-ifs because nobody knows how that group will hold up in the postseason. For the Lakers, their what-if is Andrew Wiggins. What if he's the difference maker? Or what if they give up too much and it doesn't push them any closer to a championship? The panel's suggestion was almost like a test. Let the season breathe a little. See which players step up, see where the weaknesses actually are, and then decide whether Wiggins is the piece that solves it. Because if by the middle of the season it's clear they're one wing away, then the Lakers can justify the trade, but if not, patience might be smarter. And one last thing I thought was cool. They didn't just limit the conversation to the Lakers. They also mentioned how other teams are watching this play out. The Knicks came up as an example of a team that's been sneaky in how they add talent without making noise. Quentin Grimes was brought up in that discussion as one of those players who doesn't grab headlines every night, but still represents the kind of piece a franchise values when trying to build depth the right way. It was a reminder that sometimes the names we don't obsess over can be just as important as the big stars everyone talks about. So, yeah, that was the vibe of the segment. It wasn't just about Wiggins possibly going to the Lakers, it was about the bigger picture, about timing, patience, and how franchises have to play the chess game, not just grab the first flashy piece that comes their way. So let me tell you how the conversation kept rolling on Sportcenter, because it really took a turn that caught my attention. After all that talk about Andrew Wiggins, the panel started to bring up this idea of distractions. Like, maybe all the noise around Wiggins is just smoke, while something completely different is going on behind the scenes. They literally said it felt like one of those look over here situations where all the focus is on one guy, but the real move is happening somewhere else. They threw out names like Miles Bridges, even floated the idea of an RJ Barrett type of player, someone younger, versatile, able to play both sides of the floor, and maybe a more balanced fit than what Rui Hachimura is giving the Lakers right now. The way they framed it, it wasn't about one specific name, but more about the type of move the Lakers have pulled off before. We've seen it so many times. The attention is locked on one rumored trade, and then suddenly a deal comes out of nowhere. They even went back to past examples. Remember the Utah trade? Everyone thought that deal was going to look one way. Mike Conley, Rudy Gay, Malik Beasley, but in the end, the Lakers walked away with D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt. And when you think about it now, Vanderbilt could still end up being a huge X factor for them if he stays healthy and gets back to his 2023 form. The surprise factor there was massive, and that's exactly the type of curveball the panel suggested might happen again. They listed other names the Lakers had been connected to in the past, like Dorian Finney-Smith, trades that had been talked about heavily before they happened. But then they reminded everyone of the flip side. Some of the biggest moves the Lakers made came totally out of left field, things nobody saw coming. And that's why the hosts were questioning if maybe Wiggins is being talked about too much right now, almost like it's too loud. And that's where it got interesting. One of the analysts said, "Don't be shocked if we wake up one morning and suddenly Miles Bridges is a Laker." Because the vibe right now is all Wiggins, all day, every day. Even the hosts laughed about it, saying they've been talking about Wiggins 3 times a day themselves, because honestly, there's not much else going on. But history tells us that when the Lakers are in the news this much for one guy, something else could be brewing behind the curtain. They painted scenarios too, like what if it's not Wiggins at all, a package deal for someone like Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams. Imagine the Lakers adding that kind of defensive versatility and interior presence without giving up their entire future. That kind of move would still keep Rui Hachimura in play, keep their depth intact, and let them hold on to picks for another big swing later. That's the kind of creative front office work Pelinka has been praised for in the past. And they stressed this part: Pelinka has to be working the phones beyond just Golden State. It's about leverage. If you're talking with multiple teams, you not only give yourself backup options, you also put pressure on the Warriors. You can basically say, look, if you don't drop your asking price on Wiggins, we'll go somewhere else. That's smart business, and the Lakers know how to play that game. But here's the other layer that they dug into. Who benefits from all this constant chatter about Andrew Wiggins? Think about it. Most of the reporting hasn't come from Miami or other teams. It's been very Laker-driven. The hosts mentioned guys like Jake Fisher, Mark Stein, reporters who are usually tied closely to Lakers stories. And when you see that pattern, you have to ask yourself, is this genuine momentum toward a deal? Or is it all strategic leaks to shift the narrative, distract the public, or even lower someone's trade value? That's where the panel leaned in, saying maybe this Wiggins storyline is as much about controlling the conversation as it is about an actual trade happening. Because, let's be real, if the Lakers really wanted Wiggins that badly, wouldn't it be smarter to just work in silence and get it done? That's exactly what they were hinting at. And it reminded me of something else they mentioned quickly, about how teams like the Knicks operate under the radar. The Knicks aren't out here blasting rumors every other day, but they're steady, they're patient, and they're adding the right pieces when the time comes. A guy like Quentin Grimes was brought up again as an example of that quiet value. He doesn't generate crazy headlines, but his presence shows how franchises can build depth without the constant media storm. So, in the end, Sportcenter left us with this thought. Maybe all this noise around Andrew Wiggins is real, or maybe it's just the shiny distraction while Rob Pelinka and the Lakers are working on something else entirely. And honestly, if you know how this league works, that might not be too far from the truth. And then, to wrap it all up on Sportcenter, they broke it down in a way that made a lot of sense. They said there are basically 2 ways to look at what's happening with all these Wiggins rumors. On one hand, It could be the Lakers pushing the narrative, creating buzz, and making it look like they're the only team really in the mix. Almost like they're betting against themselves, knowing that Golden State doesn't have many other serious options on the table. From that perspective, the Lakers are saying, hey, you want to move off Wiggins? We can help you do that, but don't expect us to pay full price because we know nobody else is stepping up right now. And that matters, because moving Wiggins isn't as simple as just finding a team that wants him. The panel explained that the Warriors need to check a lot of boxes at once. They need a trade partner that not only values Wiggins, but also has the right expiring contracts to free up $30 million next season. On top of that, it has to be a place Wiggins actually wants to play, because otherwise he could just ride it out and decide to go elsewhere later. That combination is tricky, and right now, the Lakers look like one of the few teams that actually fit the bill. But here's where it gets clever. Even if Wiggins isn't the guy the Lakers really want, just being in these talks gives them leverage in other negotiations. Let's say Portland calls and asks for Rui Hachimura, a young piece like Dalton Knecht, and a first-round pick for Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams. The Lakers can point back to Wiggins and say, why would we overpay for two injury-prone players who could walk next year when we could make a similar package for Wiggins, a guy who's better, locked in for an extra season, and makes us a contender right away? That's how the Lakers create a stronger negotiating position. They even expanded on that, showing how Pelinka can play this on multiple fronts. If another team wants too much for a mid-level piece, the Lakers can counter with, look, we can just add Knecht into a deal and get Wiggins instead. He's at least one tier above what you're offering. Suddenly, the Lakers aren't the ones scrambling, they're the ones dictating the term. That's powerful in trade talks. And so, the panel landed on this conclusion. The Wiggins rumors could absolutely be a smokescreen, a distraction to keep everyone's eyes in one place, while another deal comes together quiet. But at the same time, that distraction could still lead to a win. If something else materializes, great. If not, and Wiggins falls into their lap at the right price, also great. Either way, the Lakers end up looking like the masterminds at the end of the movie, where the big twist is revealed and you realize they were in control the whole time. At the same time, they reminded viewers that it could all just be off-season noise. With not much happening around the league right now, it's easy for rumors to snowball. The media runs with it, fans debate it non-stop, and suddenly, it feels bigger than it might actually be. But if history has taught us anything, it's this. When the Lakers dominate the rumor mill, there's usually more to the story than meets the eye. So the takeaway from Sportcenter was simple. Don't dismiss Wiggins as just smoke, but don't get caught thinking that's the only card in play either. For the Lakers, it might just be another step in a bigger chess game that we won't see coming until the deal is already done.